My name is John Evans and this is my 1954 Austin A40 Somerset. I also have a 1953 Austin Somerset, which is to all intents and purposes exactly the same. That car we have owned for over 40 years. My father bought the car when I was a toddler back in the late 1950s, and it's been with us ever since. This particular Austin here I've owned for about 12 months. It's the same colour, they're both Balmoral blue. Balmoral blue was a colour introduced by Austin in 1953. It was one of about 5 or 6 colours with royal connotations, which was introduced because of the coronation of Queen Elizabeth, the current Queen. My original Austin Somerset, registration NOX 902, as I say, was bought by my father back in the 1950s when I was a youngster. It has served us well all throughout my younger years, and in fact when I began to drive I learned to drive on the same car. I used it when I was in college, when I was in Plymouth. I used it actually up until the day I got married in the early 80s. It then took a secondary role, I suppose, because other cars, more modern cars, came along, but still it outlasted every one of them. So as I say, it's been with us for over 40 years. Now obviously, as you can see, it's not looking at its best, because about a year ago I decided to take it off the road and give it a bit of an overhaul. When we started to remove things like the front wings, there were 1 or 2 holes at the bottom, but it was very difficult to work out how the original metal had been folded when it was made in the factory. So I remembered that approximately 15 years ago I'd seen this Austin here in a local show, and I made a note of the gentleman's name. He was a member of the Austin County's Car Club. So I rang him up, and yes, he still had it. This was approximately a year ago. He hadn't used it for 8 or 9 years, and I managed to persuade him to sell it. Now we could use that car then as a template, because this one has never been welded. It's original, it's only done 40-odd thousand miles, and was a perfect template to do my car. My heart remains with the other one, but this is very nice, particularly as they're both exactly the same. Same colour interior. One has done 200,000 plus miles, one has done 40-odd. The Austin A40 Somerset was the successor to the very famous and successful Austin A40 Devon. This was Austin's first post-war new car, and I think was the best-selling car in Europe and Britain for all the time it was built. The Somerset was a rebodied Devon. They both use a separate chassis, and it was actually the last of the Austin models to feature a separate chassis. It was styled along the similar lines to the larger Austin A70 Hereford. They both used the same back wings, the same doors, but the difference was that the Hereford was wider and the Hereford used larger wings. Mechanically, it uses a 1200 overhead valve engine, which was actually the predecessor of the B-series Austin engine, which powered Austin Cambridges, MGBs, MGAs, but this was the actual predecessor of it. It looks pretty well identical. When my father used to use the original Austin, I mean obviously it was doing 10-12,000 miles a year. When I took it over in the 1970s, it became my everyday car. As I remember going to college, I remember doing 23,000 miles in 1 year, which is quite a lot for a car which even then was 25, 26-year-old. Over the last 10 years it hasn't gone very far at all, just come in and out of the garage with the odd little run. But about a year or two I met up with some of the local Austin County's Car Club members who are based in Cardiff, and it got my interest going again. So we go to a lot of shows, we go for runs, and since I bought this other Austin, it's enabled me, while the other one is being restored, to go further afield. So we try and use it certainly more, I wouldn't say it's a daily basis, but certainly every week, but mainly for pleasure. I've had lots of different so-called classic or collector's cars over the years, but the Austin has always remained with me where others have come and go. I think they're a good car, good quality. I like the lines of the car. I think they're very pleasing. If you notice these days, a lot of the modern cars are starting to get more rounded, similar to the Austins, whereas in the 60s or 70s they were very square and clear cut. So it doesn't look out of place, the quality is there, and it's just very pleasant to go out on a quiet, nice summer's day and go for a little run along a country lane to the pub or whatever with a lot of friends who've got similar cars.